Oh my gosh. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm just pinning our topic. 1 second. And I will pin it. Okay, cool. They're gathering people. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Rafael Espinal. Hi, Julia. We are in his campaign office. We are on the border of Bed-Stuy, Williamsburg, Bushwick. It's actually really close to where I live, so it was really exciting to be able to come somewhere so close and see such a cool person. So I'm going to introduce this man right here, Rafael. He is running for public advocate. He is currently a city council member, and before that he was also in the New York State Assembly. So, Rafael, can you just give a little introduction besides that? Tell us what it's like being a millennial, running for office. Just talk to us about this life. And Julia says, hi, neighbor, because I have a bunch of Williamsburg viewers on right now.
It's a lot of work. I never thought I'd be in politics. I ran at the age of 26. I was actually an English and film major. So had no idea that local politics actually existed, or there was local governance that actually dictated, how our daily lives were affected by it on a daily basis. So when I graduated college, I got a job just working at a city council member's office. And within my first year of working there, I kind of really grew a passion for the work and kind of wanting to have a greater impact on the neighborhood I grew up in. So 4 years later, I ran for state assembly at the age of 26, 27 years old. And the 2 years in the state assembly, I missed Brooklyn too much. Albany's not the best place to spend a lot of the nights in. The food's not that great. So I decided to run for the city council to also have the opportunity to have a greater impact here in the city and be able to shape New York City policy on a whole. And now I'm here. I'm running for public advocate 5 years after being the city council, and it's an opportunity to expand my work, be able to go out of the boundaries of my own district and be able to represent all of you across all 5 boroughs.
So I just wanted to take note that at 26, that is so young. Rafael was already in the public spotlight. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah. I mean, you would think that you'd want to spend your 26 to 29, 30 years old having a lot of fun. I was still doing that.
Yeah.
But you have to have more. You have to be more careful of just your actions as a whole. You can't be as free as you want to be as a human being, right? I would say.
So something that's actually really cool about Rafael that I've learned, he's done a lot of work that I'd say is not what you think about when you think of politics. So usually when you think politics, you're thinking about taxes and you're thinking about I think that's normally people are thinking about taxes generally, but something that I think is really cool is the cabaret law from the Prohibition era. As you know, New York is usually where you think of when you think Prohibition. You think all of the underground bootleggers, but there's actually a law that I'd love for you to chat about that still existed from that time, even though alcohol obviously is legal now. So yeah, if you could talk about this archaic law that was changed.
So there was a law called the cabaret law. It was created during Prohibition, and it was a law that regulated dancing within venues, and it was a way of figuring out where they were selling alcohol. So the idea was that if there are people dancing in an establishment, most likely people are drinking. Cheers to that. So they were shutting down speakeasies through the cabaret law. But after Prohibition ended, the law stayed in place, and the mayor at the time, whoever it was, over the past 100 years, would use it as a weapon to close down businesses they didn't feel kind of fell into the social norms of society at the time. For example, during the Harlem Jazz Renaissance, they didn't like white people dancing with black people up in Harlem. So they shut down, Harlem Jazz bars and venues. When you think about during the Stonewall movement in the 70s, when the LGBTQ community was organizing, they would shut down all of the gay clubs because they didn't want any of the gay community organizing politically within those establishments. But more recently, what we were seeing is that the law was still being used in the same way. A lot of the venues that were being shut down because there was dancing going on within those venues were venues patroned by the Caribbean community and the LGBTQ community. And on top of that, the artist community was feeling a brunt of it. A lot of music venues, DIY venues, underground parties, great parties that happen.
Sounds like very Bushwick.
Very Bushwick, right? It used to be very Williamsburg at the time. Those parties were being shut down. So, though I think those places were vital spaces in our city. And 91 years later, through organizing and working together and pushing the city to do something, we got rid of this law. So which means now is that we have more opportunity of creating a greater nightlife scene in New York City.
That is such a fun story for me because, I feel like a lot of young people can catch on to that and be like, okay, yeah, I guess local politics matter because I want to go do fun stuff on the weekend. It's not the, boring, adult, scary Donald Trump type of politics, but it's stuff that really affects you every day.
Yeah, but it's funny. We were actually able to get that done because of Donald Trump's election. And after Donald Trump was elected, there were a lot of young people who were like, how can New York still have a law that oppresses us while we have a president in the White House who's doing everything he can to go against our values? We should be fighting laws in New York City that go against our values. And that was one of those laws that we were able to organize and get done.
That's really cool to think about that. I do feel that organizing got a lot stronger after Donald Trump because people felt, first of all, people were paying attention, but also I think people were just feeling empowered to change. Yeah. So that's really exciting to hear the good that has come from this.
Right. I see it's come to Duck Duck. I love Duck Duck.
You do? We love Duck Duck. That's our favorite. Okay, that'll be our next meetup at Duck Duck. And someone said, history of marginalizing communities, a history we need to understand in order to move forward progressively. Yes, definitely. 100%. So I wanted to also just talk a little bit about, for those that weren't on or for those that might not know, that I really believe that Instagram can be a place that's not just pretty pictures, it's not just witty captions, but I think it's also an opportunity to connect with people that you wouldn't really get to otherwise and to learn something beyond just editing tips. And although editing is super cool and I really would love to learn it, I think understanding local politics is something that isn't really talked about enough.
It's not.
And something that I've learned through the years is that all politics are local.
Oh, they all are, yeah.
So I'm hoping that I can use this space to connect with you and we can talk throughout this live. Please keep sending us questions. No question is a dumb question, seriously. We would love to talk about politics. We would love to talk about keeping New York affordable. We'd love to talk about this upcoming election on February 26th, what it means, why you should care, and just in general what Rafael's been up to as a millennial that's not just fooling around, but kind of has his life together. That's really cool and something that I think a lot of us can say, wow, I would love to learn more about that. So seriously, let's get chatting. So have you worked on other campaigns besides your own campaign?
Besides, I would say barely. I've never really, like I mentioned, I was never politically engaged or involved. It just all happened by accident when I was looking for a job after I graduated out of college. But I guess while I was working, when I began working in government, and I started learning about little campaigns that were happening, I would get involved with it and kind of help out. But it was never really like a campaign that kind of was kind of leading the way, kind of changing democracy for the city of New York. It was more like little local elections that would help out. But I think the biggest election I got involved in was Bernie Sanders. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Sorry if you're Hillary supporters.
That's an awesome experience.
His message resonated with me. Being from Brooklyn, kind of hearing about income inequality and student debt and climate change and how we're going to deal with those things. So I was the first elected official to endorse Bernie Sanders, and I became a surrogate. So I kind of felt that it was probably the most real, legit election I really got involved in.
As a surrogate, did you get a vote as an electoral college candidate?
I went to.
Oh, wow.
Not the electoral college. I went to the convention.
Oh, wow. That's
nominate,
crazy.
To nominate the Democratic the Democratic nominee, which happened to be Hillary. But I was, I was surrogating for Bernie, and I was going to the rallies, opening up for him, in those huge presidential rallies that you see on TV. And I remember thinking to myself, like, holy cow, like, he's here, So
that's crazy.
So that was fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't imagine what it's like going from the experience of being on a campaign as the elected official, because I've worked on campaigns. I helped a friend run for county commission in grad school. It was just a fun experience, and I've gone door knocking, and I worked as a political consultant, so I worked with a lot of different campaigns. But it's just like, obviously my perspective on a campaign is really different from yours, so that's just so cool to see that your experiences so far have all been successful too. Like, you haven't lost yet. That's amazing. Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that have come in. Can you talk about what the public advocate actually does?
Yeah, so the public advocate is actually that. It's your advocate, the person who's supposed to speak for you and speak against government when it's not working for you. Who holds the mayor accountable? The public advocate does. When the mayor's initiatives are falling apart, my job is to oversee the agencies and make sure that they're doing the right thing, our tax dollars not being wasted. But the public advocate also has the power to continue introducing legislation. So if you like the legislation I've been passing over the past 5 years, I can still do that as public advocate. The only difference is I'll be able to travel around the entire city and actually be able to speak to every single New Yorker as their representative. So I think it's an exciting opportunity, especially now when I feel that we're all feeling the pressures of being in New York City because of how unaffordable it's gotten for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a tenant or you're a homeowner or you're a small business owner, like, the city is really becoming out of reach. And
we're all feeling a little broke in New York.
We're all feeling a little broke in New York, and I think that it's time that we have someone who understands those pressures and is able to work on legislation to change the direction of our city.
Awesome. So just like a quick interesting tidbit about the public advocate is that they don't get to vote on anything. So that's just a really interesting perspective, because a lot of, or I'd say most elected officials, besides I guess judges.
Right.
Some places judges are elected, some places like police chiefs are elected, but besides those positions, usually people are either voting or vetoing, but public advocate does not do that.
Which is kind of cool, though, I think, and I think it's also a strength, because what we hear a lot about politics is that the votes that elected officials take are influenced by campaign donations, or they're influenced by society as a whole. And the public advocate is not accountable to anyone but the people. So being that you don't have a vote allows you to the liberty of being up front and taking on city government.
Yeah, that's really crazy to think about. Not having to feel bogged down. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not taking larger donations. These are all small donations from people.
No developer donations. It's all about the people. A lot of $27 donations that I received over the past few months. So really grassroots led, people powered, no consultants consulting us on how to run our election. All folks who are relatively young. I got people who worked on Bernie's campaign, who worked on Beto O'Rourke's campaign, people who were born and raised here in the city, people who just moved here into the city. So I think that it's really a campaign that represents everyone. And we're only invested in the city and making the city better for all of us.
Yeah, going back to the 2016 election, that's something that was a really good thing that came out of it. I feel like a lot of candidates are empowered to say, I'm only taking small donations now, and I'm not going to be bogged down by responsibilities from large companies.
Interests, right?
Yeah, so that's really cool and really notable to be doing.
Thank you.
So we have some more questions that have come in. What has changed the most in Brooklyn from when you were growing up?
It's gotten a lot more expensive. I mean, you could argue that crime has gone down significantly, right? Brooklyn was really dangerous. No one wanted to move to Brooklyn. You either lived in Manhattan or you lived in Queens. And if you were in Brooklyn, you were kind of seen as a second-class citizen because how disinvested the borough was as a whole.
Now it's the most populated.
Now it's the most populated.
It's
and
crazy.
I remember growing up here my entire life and thinking to myself, once I turn 21 and I'm out of college, I'm leaving Brooklyn, I'm out. And then I turn 21 and in Brooklyn, everyone's moving to Brooklyn. And I'm like, where the hell do I go? But of course, with the good comes the bad. You know, there has been a mass displacement because of it. We have too many luxury apartments being built and not real housing for the everyday New Yorker. And I think that we have to do more to push back against that and have real affordable housing being built.
Yes. Okay. So before I go into some other questions that have come up, and I promise you all I'm going to answer all of them, but let's talk affordable housing, because this is something that affects us as a lowercase affordable housing. It affects us with a capital A affordable housing, like something that I think has been controversial but also could be done right is fixing like antiquated zoning. Basically what I'm saying is that different buildings are zoned. Basically they're allowed by the city to have different purposes. So for instance, their purpose could just be residential, or it could just be commercial, or it can only go up to a certain height. So basically there are a lot of places in my neighborhood. So I'm in Williamsburg. A little bit east of me, like 2 blocks east of me, is industrial Williamsburg. Has a lot of old factories, and also there are a lot of like abandoned parking lots. And so the issue to me is not necessarily is there enough space in New York, but how can we rezone, how can we get rid of empty parking lots without raising rents, but instead having like enough supply to meet the demand. So let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's a very complicated subject. That there's no one silver bullet that's going to deal with the affordable housing crisis. But in Bushwick, specifically, let's say you see a lot of tall luxury towers being built, and you're seeing a lot of smaller homes being destroyed, and that's because there is no zoning cap. Meaning, any developer that's able to get a certain size lot of land can build as high as they want. And that's what we're trying to change through this community-led rezoning, is how do we create zoning that makes sense for the neighborhood, but we're actually protecting the character, but also creating real affordable housing for the people that live there. When we talk about parking lots, yes, we should rezoning, they're being underutilized, but if we're going to rezone a parking lot, we have to make sure that we're rezoning it to maximize the amount of affordable housing that can come out of that. And when you think about affordable housing, there are folks who make $15,000 a year that are looking for apartments, and there are people who are making $80,000, $90,000 a year who are looking for an apartment because the rents are out of control. I mean, just like the average price of an apartment in Bushwick is $2,300. The idea of living alone as a 20-something-year-old or being in early 30s, I think is out of reach for many people, and that's what we need to be focusing on. How do we change that? So we not only do we have to look at zoning, but we have to go to Albany, advocate for universal rent control to make sure where people have the right to renew their leases and the rents are not being jacked up to astronomical rates. We have to tax landlords who are keeping apartments vacant, especially luxury apartments vacant, so that they can to incentivize them to be able to rent those apartments at a cheaper price. So there's a lot of things we need to look at, and I'm hoping as public advocate, we're able to start tackling those issues.
Yeah, so just a quick question. As public advocate, can you, as yourself, travel to Albany and lobby on behalf of the city? Okay.
Definitely, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, a few more questions. What do you see as one of the largest wastes of taxpayer dollars in New York City specifically?
The largest waste of taxpayer dollars usually come to the outsourcing of contracts. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, there might be a cleaning service that's going to clean that's in charge of cleaning public housing, and a lot of the times those contracts go to companies that are outside of New York City. They might hire some folks from New Jersey or from upstate New York, and they're charging triple, quadruple the amount of price that it will cost for someone local to do it. So we could, instead of keeping our money local in our city and allowing people from our city to be able to build wealth for themselves, our money is being spilt out to other states and other cities. So I think we have to stop that and start pulling back on that. And even if you're paying more for a local job, the fact that your tax dollars stay here locally for a local company, that company is going to reinvest those tax dollars back into our city. So I would say finding ways where our money is not being spent elsewhere and we're actually spending money locally. I
have another question about will you have more influence on the city council because you have constituents all over the city?
100%, and that's also an attractive part of the job. People always say, "Oh, the public advocate doesn't have much power because they don't vote," but you do introduce legislation. And also, you're a citywide elected official. You're second to the mayor. If something was to happen to the mayor, the public advocate becomes the mayor. I think that influence in itself kind of creates this people power, I think, behind the position where city council members, even the mayor, you're able to change opinion on issues because public opinion is standing behind you.
Another question I have about being involved in city initiatives while having a 9-to-5. Do you have any easy hacks or small changes we can make to still do our part? Basically, how do you get involved with local issues while you're working full time? Like, do you have any small ways? I am just gonna butt in real quick to remind everyone, no matter what job you have, I currently have a Motivote team that basically they have a bunch of actions involving the election coming up, like checking your registration online, tuning in here, going to the polls, texting friends, making plans to be involved in the election. In exchange for your participation, you can win free fitness classes, you can win free meals. I mean, there's like very little to lose because it's something you should be doing anyway, but so much to gain. So I think that, to me right now, that's like the easiest way to get involved in the election if you really don't have time to do anything else.
And I would add, there are community board meetings that happen once a month that you can easily go to. They're in your community. They're usually like in the third Wednesday or third Tuesday, third Thursday of the month. We're actually able to learn about what investments are happening in the neighborhood. You're able to like speak out on certain issues, whether it be a rezoning in your community. And then I will also say, find your local Democratic club. There's a few in Brooklyn. There's a few in Queens. There's a few in Manhattan. Find out who they are, like these Manhattan Young Dems, Brooklyn Young Dems, Queens Young Dems.
New Kings Democrats is near here too.
Democrats also in North Brooklyn. You can reach out to them. They have meetings once a month as well, and that's an easy way to get plugged in. Kind of start, put yourself on track to be part of the conversation.
I also wanted to share, actually, my first experience with any public advocate, was right after the 2017 inauguration, when a bunch of refugees were detained at JFK Airport. The previous public advocate, who just left the seat to become New York State Attorney General, held this really awesome lecture with attorneys from around the state and other minority community leaders, all about protecting minorities, refugees, and immigrants in New York. So I found out about that. It was happening at NYU, and it was like a lunch hour discussion, and I got to go and meet her and hear all about this, and I learned so much just from going to that, and I met so many people involved. So I also would say, if you don't really want to do much but you want to learn, that there are so many cool lectures that happen all around the city. I would say check different universities to see if they have any speaker series coming up. Also, a lot of elected officials will host forums, either with different thought leaders or public policy groups. So you could also go to a happy hour after work and because there's usually beer at these types of things. I don't know if you would say so too. Yeah. But it's a fun thing that you can do, grab a friend and go to a lecture.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're not happening every single night of the week, so it won't be that much of a burden. I mean, it's literally once a month. Just find the time to do something like that.
And I will always go if you want. Yeah. So we also want to know, okay, I'm going to try to keep my mouth shut for this one, but what are your thoughts on the hashtag LTrain shutdown?
I'm glad it's not shutting down. I think that we should be optimistic. My hopes is that the second plan that came out, which means that the LTrain will continue running for most part of the day, my hopes is that it actually is going to work. So I'm pushing towards the more optimistic end. I know a lot of folks are pushing back, kind of saying, is this real? Why did it take so long? Where did this come from? But let's not get too involved in the details. Let's make sure it works. Let's hope it works. And also, let's push the city and the MTA to keep all those investments they promised, as if the train is going to shut down. meaning the extra buses, the extra bike lanes, access to city bikes, all of those great things that they promised us. Let's push the city to make sure they continue those investments. I think because overall we're going to need extra transportation methods no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, I saw that this weekend. So regardless of the L train shutdown and the L train shutdown, for those of you that aren't along the L train, you'd know that no matter what, they were going to have the L train closed on weekends. For I guess it started I think last weekend up until the end of April. And what I saw last night was, or what the city has instead is a few kind of, and by the city I meant the MTA, but in the city you'll see different bus routes as alternative service, but they're not really convenient. There's one that goes from Bedford to Lorimer, one that goes from Lorimer to Myrtle, and then Myrtle the rest of the way. So it's really not it's not a good replacement, and so a lot of people instead are going to be using cabs. That's just gonna happen. The buses, I saw a bus go by, an L train shuttle bus, and it was empty.
Yeah.
I was so oh no, that means all those people that would be on an 8-car L train packed are now in cars instead.
And then I've been pushing for the MTA to go 100% electric with the bus fleet, right? We're gonna have all these buses spewing diesel fumes in our communities. The least the MTA can do is expand their electric bus fleet and make sure that the extra buses going through Williamsburg and Bushwick should be emissions free.
Actually, let's talk a little bit about the MTA and the subway, because I actually had a lot of people before today voice that that's their biggest concern. I actually have a viewer who, hi Lisette, I'm talking about you for a sec, who was talking to me yesterday about how her commute, she had to commute to work for a week, and it was such a bad experience that she was I'm so excited I now live within walking distance. She just moved. But a lot of people have shared stories about just having such bad experiences on the subway. I had another friend who just wrote, Julia said she had to take a $10 cab to work just from Broadway Lafayette basically to Union Square because the subway was so messed up.
Right.
This is just a huge issue. And for those of you that don't know, the MTA is a state-run agency, so the city does put dollars into it, but into the subway's maintenance a little, but really, it's run by the state. So
the state will tell you they don't do it either. So everyone's kind of fighting on who really has control. It's a bigger conversation.
Yeah. So, knowing that, how can can the public advocate do anything to fix the subway?
The public advocate doesn't have direct power, right, over the MTA or any of those decisions. I think what the public advocate can do is figure out solutions to the problem. How do we find the funding to fix the MTA? There's the plan that's needed to make sure that all the subway lines are working correctly and the right investments put in is going to cost the MTA about, I believe it's $40 billion. So it's figuring out where's that money going to come from. There's ideas like congestion pricing. Let's put tolls on the bridges. There's also this idea.
We're going to talk about that too, by the way, guys.
Let's talk about the millionaire's tax being proposed. Millionaires paying more in taxes to go to the MTA. But I was able to find out with my team that actually Wall Street pays $0 in taxes every single year when it comes to stock trading. So every time there's a stock being traded, they do pay the tax on it, but at the end of the year, the city and state returns all those tax dollars that they paid back to them. It's as if we file our taxes at the end of the year and getting 100% of what we paid into the city and state government. Just think about it that way. That's what's happening in Wall Street, and it's bad. It's terrible. So I'm proposing for us to recoup that money. Let's stop giving it back to them. It's $11 billion, and we can fix this MTA within 4 years.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never knew that. Feeling like one of those Occupy Wall Street people from 2010 right now, but that's really, really interesting. Okay, so do we all know, I guess, hit the heart, I know there's lots of hearts coming through right now, but hit the heart if you know about congestion pricing, if you've heard of it, if you know about it, if you have an opinion about it, if you want to know about it. I just want to know if anyone knows what I'm talking about. Silence. Okay, so far no one knows about congestion pricing. So let's talk about it because What is that? Okay, so I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm going to let you talk about if you support it and what your concerns are.
All right, so congestion pricing is a proposal where they're going to put tolls on the Williamsburg Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, pretty much all toll-less bridges, meaning right now you can drive your car over these bridges and not pay a toll to get to Manhattan. So they want to put a toll there, meaning so there'll be less people who are going to want to drive into Manhattan during rush hour because they're going to have to pay $5 to $10 to get over the bridge, which means there'll be less congestion in Manhattan. So think about congestion pricing, right? And then the idea is to take that revenue of the toll money and then put it into the MTA to fix the MTA. But studies are showing it's not enough. But it's part of the solution. There are a lot of people who are opposed to it because drivers don't want to pay the extra money. They feel like they're being taxed. But I think overall, New Yorkers want to see it implemented because they want the trains to be fixed. So, you know, it was a tough battle. It was a proposal that was brought up many years ago, and it failed in Albany. But I think there's more momentum this time around, and it's very likely that there will be tolls in these bridges within the next year or two.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that because I think that instantly people think that this is an affordability crisis, but I just wanted to give a little perspective. Because this is not a new idea. I was just in Singapore, many of you know, for my friend's wedding this summer, and they use congestion pricing all the time because they have public transit, and I think that a lot of people around the world don't want carbon emissions from cars. They don't want their roads to be full of cars all the time. It's not safe, it's dirty, etc., and traffic's bad, and so you just pay a little more.
Yeah.
So for New York to implement it, it basically would mean that your cab fares are going to be a little bit higher.
Right.
So the two issues that people talk about with this, first of all, is this going to be affecting poor people that don't live near the subway? And second of all, the MTA is broken, is the money going to fix it? So let's talk a little bit about that. I know from what I've read, the most poor people are not the ones that are going to be affected by congestion pricing. They might not have a car, for starters. Cars are really expensive. But yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts a little about that. And I promise I'll get to all of our questions that are rolling in.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to make that the middle class and the working class will be affected by this. But studies show that a very, very small percentage actually drive into Manhattan during rush hour. And I think if you put a poll out there, you'll see that there's a very minuscule amount of people who will be affected by this, and this would, I guess, in turn, incentivize or push them to actually take the train over into Manhattan instead of driving their cars. Does it suck? Yes, but does the goals of the plan, are they good? Yeah, they're good, right? I mean, it's better for the environment. You have less cars going into Manhattan, better for air quality. There'd be funding set aside for the MTA. So I can see both sides of the issues. Now, I don't think anyone on either side is wrong to feel the way they feel, but at the same time, we have to come up with solutions to be able to maintain the city.
And Hillary asked if accessorized vans will be subjected to congestion pricing, and I think there's definitely an HOV discount, right?
Yeah, I mean that's all in the works, right?
Yeah.
It still hasn't been baked in yet. But I'm sure there's ideas that will come up, and I'll keep my eye on it. I will most likely have to take a vote on this as well as a city council person, and I'm looking at the details to make sure it actually works for all New Yorkers.
And how do we know that the transportation money goes to actually fixing true subway issues? So, for instance, all of those switches that we have no idea about, versus just making stations pretty.
That would have to be in the legislation as well. So, I mean, these are all good questions. And I think these are really important sticking points. We have to make sure that whatever law passes or bill passes, it includes these concerns.
Okay, more questions about all of those people on the ballot. It kind of feels like a reality show. How do you recommend people actually get to know the candidates?
Check out the website. You'll see a lot of us are talking about the same issues. I think what you should look for is what sets us all apart. In my case, you will see that I probably have the most comprehensive green plan on how to make New York City greener, how we tackle climate change. I'm also the only candidate that actually had experience both in the state and the city on a city level. I've been in both offices. But yeah, I would say check out our websites. I think mine's the best. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, and also, time's going by really quickly, but wasn't the debate last week?
The debate was last week. This Wednesday is our last and final debate. There'll be 7 of us out of the 17 that are running.
So many.
So they're calling it the leading contenders debate. So it's like the top tier candidates will be debating.
Brush off the shoulder, top tier candidate right
top
here.
Tier. But yeah, it's the one to watch. And I think that you'll learn a lot about every single candidate there.
So you mentioned that you're the green candidate. You've done so much for the environment. And I have someone wanting to know about your plastic banning bill. And then if you could talk about that and also your initiative for the green roofs.
Yeah.
We'd love to know a little bit about both of those.
Yeah, so if anyone's noticed, when you go out to bars now, you'll see a lot more paper straws or no straws being served. I actually introduced a bill about 6 months ago to ban plastic straws in New York City, kind of mirroring what happened in Seattle and other states. And it was my way of beginning to tackle plastic pollution. Right? Studies are showing that by 2050, if we don't reduce the amount of plastic we're using, we're going to have more plastic in our oceans than we do fish, because our waterways are being polluted by plastic. While talking about the plastic straws, I also introduced a new bill last week that mirrors what the EU did, and it's phasing out all single-use plastics. So any plastic out there that's used, for less than a few minutes, will be banned at some point in the near future. For example, cutlery, the plastic fork and spoon that you get when you take out, unnecessary, right? Talk about plastic cups, and the idea is how do we find more sustainable, alternatives to those.
Yeah, can you talk about the green roofs? Also, I've been following Rafael on Instagram. He is super fun on Instagram. It was really funny during the debate. Actually, they asked about everyone's social media involvement, and they asked do people on your campaign run your Twitter? And Rafael's actually. Can you say it again? It was very funny.
What did I say?
He was actually, it's me, and I prefer Instagram.
Oh, yeah,
and I was sitting on the couch
right.
that's my Instagram friend.
That's right.
So
I do all my Instagram.
So I remember a few months back, Rafael was actually in Amsterdam learning about what they're doing to promote sustainability in. Is it just new buildings or also cleaning up old buildings?
It's new
and what we're doing here.
It's
cool.
new and old. Right now, there's no mandate though. I mean, there are green roofs that exist, and that's because developers are putting them in for many reasons. One, for aesthetics, to draw folks onto the rooftop, and I'm sure it's an amenity. But I see green roofs as a way to tackle climate change. It cools down our city. It captures rainwater, so less flooding on our streets. It cleans our water. It also helps us. It also helps insulate the building, so less heat is being used, less AC is being used, meaning less carbon emissions. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife on, I think, the way to kind of fight climate change on a city level. We have so many rooftops being unused, a lot of black tops, meaning that the roofs are 100 degrees, a lot hotter than they should be. So if we're able to get every single rooftop green, which is what I'm pushing for, the city will be much cooler, much more bearable in the summer. Our air will be cleaner because the green will filtrate our air. So it has a lot of positive impacts. There are other cities that actually mandated this. Portland, San Francisco require every single roof to be green, at least 25% of the roof to be green. So I'm trying to do the same here.
So what happens? Let's say your bill. Okay, so let's say Rafael's the man, and his bill that he introduced, what was it, is it a month ago or a little?
Yeah,
about a month ago.
Yeah.
Let's say it continues through the process, but Rafael wins public advocate. So what happens? Can you talk about the process of defending your bill if you're not, I mean, this is a crazy house of hypotheticals, but let's hear it.
Hypothetical, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I win the public advocacy, again, we have the power to introduce legislation. I do hope to carry all those bills with me as public advocate. I think it'll give me a larger platform to be able to advocate on them.
Can you change as a co-sponsor was City Council member Rafael Espinal and public advocate Rafael Espinal? So you can still defend it in committee or?
No, it would just probably be public advocate Rafael Espinal.
Oh, okay.
But again, it goes back to the public advocate having influence from the voters. And if I win this race, it's going to be a clear message to City Hall saying that we want a greener New York City. We want a more livable New York City. And it'll kind of give me the power to be able to shift these conversations and push the city to carry them.
Okay, some more questions coming in. What are your thoughts on legalizing marijuana?
Legalize it. It's time. I was actually the first elected official to walk in the pot parade back in 2015. And that's kind of bizarre. 2015, only one elected official has marched in the pot parade. So, yeah, that was me.
Was it you? I thought I saw something about legalize marijuana, have the tax dollars go to fix the subway.
No, that wasn't me.
That was someone else. And I think you said you wanted to go back to the people that have been affected by it. Right. Yeah.
Let's put it back into our schools. Let's put it back into creating job opportunities for the young kids who have been arrested for selling marijuana. Let's make sure that we make real investments in the communities that need the most. There was a proposal to put it into the MTA. We did the math. It will take 400 years to fix the MTA with the revenue that marijuana is going to create. So it's not a real plan. It's not viable. So let's put it back into the communities.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. What are your? Let's hear about Amazon HQ2. People want to hear about the death of it. Your thoughts on the process.
It's crazy how much mixed feelings are out there after it was killed. I've heard from both sides of people celebrating. There are people who want to kill the people who are celebrating. But I personally, I was always against the deal. There was a letter that was circulated to all elected officials 2 years ago. The letter literally said, "Dear Mr. Bezos, we as a body urge you to move Amazon into our city for all these reasons." I did not sign it. I didn't think Amazon was the best company for New York City. Amazon is responsible for a lot of our small mom and pops closing their doors. Amazon has a bad history of how it treats its workers, exploiting them, does not let them unionize. If you talk to people in Seattle, they'll tell you how Amazon has made the city unlivable and very expensive. So them moving here, I think, didn't bring enough benefits for our city. We were actually going to offer them $3 billion in subsidies, $3 billion that I think that could be used to support small businesses that need those subsidies. So from the beginning, I was against it. And I think them pulling back as quickly as they did, just with little resistance, kind of shows that they weren't ready to make the right investments in our city. And I think that we should be asking for more. You have companies like Google that are here. They're not making a huge fuss. They're contributing. They're doing great work. And that's what we should be asking for.
Let's talk about what you want to do to promote more women in city leadership.
There's a great campaign called, I think, 21 and 21, and it's about getting 21 women into the city council on 2021, which is actually the next election. We should do everything we can to make sure that the city council has equal representation of women. Right now, I think there's only about 10 or 11 out of 51 members.
What?
Which is crazy. There's a lot of committees that are actually do not have any women sitting in them. So more has to be done. Let's push women to vote to run for office.
Oh my gosh.
Encourage folks that you think will make a great leader to run.
So this is so interesting because New York is such a diverse place. You would think that we would have better representation than that. So why do you think there aren't enough women?
It's for a lot of reasons, I would say. One, I would say that I think politics. There's a lot of institutions that play, right? And there's a lot of institutions that cultivate and create their own candidates to help them win these seats. Unfortunately, the machines. Unfortunately, it's not women are not the ones that are being chosen to be the front runner in these races. So that's one thing. I think that's society as a whole has to play a bigger role in pushing for female leadership in these positions.
I think something that the city's done for those of you that don't know is that they now have matching for donations that they'll do once you hit a certain amount, can you explain it? Basically, isn't it 1 to 8 matching once you hit a certain threshold?
That's what makes this election so great is that everyone who donates, your donation is matched 8 times by the city. So if you were to give me $10, it becomes $80, $90 including the technology you gave, and that's supposed to help candidates who can't really, who really don't have the opportunity to raise big money because they're not connected, for lack of a better word, and also helps create these grassroots movements and candidates that who want to wake up one day and say they want to run for office. It's giving them the tools they need to raise real money to be able to compete in these races, which is a great program the city has, and I'm actually using it now as a public advocate. I've raised about $170,000. Some of that is matched. So I'm able to run this race with $600,000, $700,000, compared to my opponents who raise money from special interests and have $300,000 in the bank. Because of the matching program, I'm able to compete against them.
Hillary shares a not so fun fact. Lots of cities have no women at all in city government, including Miami, as of 2015.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. That's insane.
That's so crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I think about, as a young person who's politically involved, I know what it takes to run for office, and that's really daunting. There's so much involved. You aren't getting paid. You don't have time to work a full-time job. So it's not easy to run for office at all.
It's not easy, but I think that we should be encouraging more women to do so.
Let's see. We not Dolly. Oh, yeah. Let's hear about where in the city you would like to see given back to the people, either as pedestrian plazas or shared streets. Can you think of a place?
One of the two?
Yeah, or you could do both.
Where do we want to see the city giving back more to?
Yeah, do you know an intersection or somewhere that you would like a pedestrian plaza or shared streets? I have an idea too for me, but I want to know yours.
I mean, they're great everywhere. I mean, I would like to see more in the Lower East Side. I think Lower East Side is a very cool, little walkable neighborhood. A lot of great places, shops to check out. And if you're able to cross the street without worrying about getting hit by a car, I think that'd be great. I mean, it's crazy how much different a lot of cities in Europe are compared to New York. You're able to walk around in the middle of the street and just enjoy the city for what it is, and not worry about a vehicle crashing into you. I think that we should have more of those conversations how we get there.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that right now, we have the really big pedestrian plaza in Times Square, but we're not. I mean, that's obviously it was necessary and it's great, but it's not even an area where people are walking storefront to storefront.
Right.
Imagine if something like that existed. And that would be so cool. Or in Fidei, where the streets are so tiny. I think about the Bedford stop, that
Bedford.
area.
Yeah,
it's always crazy whenever I'm there. All these people are on the sidewalks. There's vendors on the sidewalks. There's so many cars. Abigail, I agree. Cars are scary. I don't know if you know this, and I'll come forward, but yes, cars are bad. I was hit by a car 2 weeks ago, a couple blocks away on Manhattan and McKibben. Yeah, I was just crossing the street in front of a car in front of a stop sign, and he wasn't paying attention and hit me. So I actually have some pretty bad back injuries now, but I'm doing okay, relatively. But I posted about it.
Did you file a police report?
Yes.
Okay.
They all were there very quickly.
Is the insurance company going to help you?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So I'm okay in terms of legal issues, but it was awful. I'm still really scared every time I cross the street now. And I had a bunch of people, I posted about it a day or two later, and a bunch of people wrote to me, all locals in New York, and were like, I was hit by a car, some fared worse than me, some new people who were fared worse. So I found that this platform, a lot of people are really scared about cars. So it's really great to know that this is something that you care about too, because we're all scared.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're dangerous.
So we have just a couple of minutes left. I just want to get our last few questions in before we wrap up. For those of you that logged in and were like, who is this that Julian's talking to? It's Rafael Espinal. He's a city council member in Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, and East New York. I am in his campaign office in Bed-Stuy right now. His election is February 26th. And Abigail wants to know, how can you fight for New York City schools as a public advocate? She is a proud public school graduate.
Me too. I went to public school my entire life. I also went to public college. But I think that there's a lot of cool things happening within our public school system that only more affluent schools are actually taking advantage of. There are two things. One is, how do we get healthy school lunches inside every single school? right? And two, meditation in the classrooms. And I think both are very important because it focuses on the wellness of the student. You have a lot of children going to school who come in the morning, eating potato chips, drinking orange soda, coming into the classroom. They don't have the nutrition they need to be able to focus and perform well in the classroom. Then you have children also who come in with trauma. Maybe they come from a broken home, or maybe they're living in a homeless shelter, maybe they live in a high crime area, and that trauma in itself does not allow them to sit down and be able to get a proper education as well. So how do we mix it to get every child the opportunity to be able to, live a healthier lifestyle, learn about how to live a healthier lifestyle, and then be able to see their performances improve in the classroom because of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't heard about this initiative for meditation in the classrooms either, as Hillary said, so that's really cool.
It's really cool. It's happening. It's actually, I think Chicago and Baltimore have been leading studies around it. They've seen it work. There are schools in New York City that are actually doing it. There are nonprofits going into schools like in Brownsville, in high need districts that need the extracurricular activities, and they're seeing it works. So let's get into every single school. Let's make it available to everyone.
So I used to work in politics in Florida, and I remember actually my whole political background started because of public school education, and I remember sitting in on an education committee where someone was trying to reduce recess for kids and was saying it was a waste of time, and that we have to compete with people from other countries and we don't have time for recess, and it was so heartbreaking because kids really need these spaces, and I'm really glad to say that bill did not pass.
I was a recess kid.
Yeah. So it's great to see on the flip side here, giving even more support for kids to be able to be people outside of academics. That's really important. So I feel like I could ask you 5,000.
All night.
Yeah. This is probably the most fun conversation I've had in a while. Cool. This was great because you're so fun to talk to about this. These are my favorite things. I could I could talk at a bar about these things, I guess, I don't know. Do you think that's cool, bar conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working to save all the bars in New York City, so I like a good bar, and I can have great conversations in these bars.
Oh, a go-to bodega sandwich. Yes.
Oh, BLT.
BLT.
Not a BLT. Well, BLT is good. No, bacon, egg, and cheese.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and BLTs, both of them.
$2.50.
Yes.
Some places are so expensive.
Yes.
That's the biggest problem, maybe, for affordability. Is those $5 BACs.
A good bacon, egg, and cheese. A good bacon, egg, and cheese.
Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. I am so honored to be able to talk with Rafael in front of all of you. What a cool opportunity. What a fun thing to be able to do on a Sunday night of President's Weekend, a week before a special election. I really want to make an important point that New York City has one of the lowest turnout records in the country, and millennials tend to have some of the lowest turnout rates. So, for those of you watching, for those of you that are watching this later, not live, and for those of you that have friends, I want you to vote. And I want you to tell your friends to vote, because I think it's about time. We are old enough. Millennials are now almost 40. I think it's time that our generation is represented.
That's it.
And it doesn't take that long to go to the polls. You get a cool sticker, a free sticker, and you get great legislation passed that has you in mind because you took the time to vote for someone that has your interests represented.
Yes.
So,
Hillwas, please vote for me. I'm asking for your support. I know you have absentee ballot. Make it happen. And everyone else, February 26th, very important election. Is the election that's really going to start changing the direction of our city. Think about it. In 2 years, we're going to be having the mayoral election. This election, whoever you vote for, will send a signal to what ideals you're looking for from our next city representatives. So let's make it happen.
And if you don't live in New York City, I guarantee you know someone that lives in New York City, and you can let them know, and you can get them to the polls, and I want you all to let me know when you voted, okay? We are signing off. Again, I'm Julianne from How to Be Broke in New York.
Rafael Espinal, nice to meet you all.
Have a great night.